Earthquakes, UFOs, and Hornets. Oh my! Earthquakes, UFOs, and Hornets. Oh my! What is coming next? Hey, Central family. Thank you for indulging me in that terrible skit. But I tell you, that's kind of how this year has felt, hasn't it? It's felt like it's been one thing right after the next. And of course, that was a terrible homage to the Wizard of Oz when they're going through the forest and they're saying, lions and tigers and bears, oh my. And they're just waiting for that next thing to jump out at them. And again, that's kind of how 2020 has felt, hasn't it? At the beginning of the year, what were we hearing? Well, World War III might happen anytime soon. Then we heard about Australia being on fire and flooding at the same time. And then we've had this COVID-19 situation. And then we also have had the Tennessee tornado that came through and messed up a good portion of West Tennessee. And it's felt like almost every month there's a new storm or tornado going through that area. And then we had the Pentagon, I believe it was, that released some videos of some unidentified flying objects. And I don't know what they were. I'm not even going to begin to comment on it. But when that was released, it seemed like no one even batted an eye, right? Because of everything else going on. Because almost like just a few days later, I think it was, after those videos were released, what were we hearing about next? Murder hornets. Those were the new things on the horizon. And it's only May. And it's made a lot of people go, well, what does the summer hold for us? And in all seriousness, though, what it caused a lot of people to do is to ask the question, is this the end of the world? And there are a lot of people feeling that right now. They're saying, how is this not the end of the world? This is what I imagined the end of the world to look like. Well, let's talk about that. Because, again, it's on a lot of people's minds. Does the Bible have anything to say about it? It sure does. Let's look over at Matthew chapter 24. And here's where a lot of people will go for this discussion, to point out that they believe that this is the end of the world. Starting in verse 4 of Matthew 24. Jesus answered them, "See that no one leads you astray, for many will come in my name, saying, 'I am the Christ,' and they will lead many astray. And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars." Okay. Have we heard about wars and rumors of wars? Absolutely, at the beginning of this year, didn't we? See that you're not alarmed, for this must take place, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdoms, and there will be famines. Have we had famines? Well, maybe not to the extent of a true famine, but it's made people feel this way when they go into the supermarket and they can't buy the things that they're used to buying. It was harder there for a while to buy meat. Of course, toilet paper was out of stock everywhere. Cleaning supplies, right? And it made us wonder, is this a famine coming, right? Let's continue. And there will be earthquakes in various places. When we look at the natural disasters that have occurred over the past 5 months, I mean, the earthquakes, the tornadoes, the heavy storms, the floodings, the fires, it's made a lot of people go, this seems like end of the world kind of stuff. It's made people chant what we were chanting earlier, right? Oh my. So what do we do with this information? Is this what Jesus is talking about? That he's talking about this is the end of the world? Well, that's not what Jesus is talking about here. Jesus is actually referring to a very specific point in history, and that was 70 AD. And that's when the Romans came in and destroyed the temple. And that, when you're looking at the context, going back into chapter 23 and into chapter 24, that's the idea. That there will be this cataclysmic event, and it's going to happen in Jerusalem in 70 AD. And he goes on a little bit further because he gives us an idea about when this is going to take place when we jump down to verse 34. Wrapping up what he's talked about up until that point, Jesus says this, "Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place." And in the Bible, when the word generation is used, it sometimes has reference to a period of about 40 years. When we talk about the wilderness wandering, we had a generation that passed away. They were in the wilderness for 40 years. Well, here we see that this has a potential to be 40 years, right? So if Jesus died around 30 AD, and we're adding 40 years to that, what do we come up with? 70 AD. This generation, Jesus is talking to his disciples, this generation will not pass away until all these things have taken place. He has a very specific moment in time that he's referring to. He's not talking about our time. But he is talking about our time just a couple verses later. Look at verse 36. "But concerning that day and hour, no one knows, not even the angels of heaven nor the Son, but the Father only. For as were the days of Noah, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. For as in those days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day when Noah entered the ark. And they were unaware until the flood came and swept them all away. So will be the coming of the Son of Man." So what's the idea? Jesus is saying there's two events that are coming. One is going to happen at 70 AD. There will be signs for that. There's a specific time designated for that. And then there's coming a different event talking about the end of the world when Jesus comes back, and there won't be any signs for that one. And not even the Son of Man, as he's talking here in verse 36, not even the Son of Man knows the day or the hour for that one, but the Father only. So what do we do with this information? The point is that no one knows when the day or the hour is when Jesus is coming back, and there will be no signs accompanying it. Now, on the one hand, we like to have a heads up, right? We want to know that something is going to happen that we've got to be prepared for. But when Jesus talks about the coming when the final destruction happens of the world and the final judgment, he's saying there's no signs. He's already given us a heads up that we need to be ready at all times for this. We need to be prepared all the time to be ready for when he comes back, because he's going to come like a thief in the night. No one knows. No one can be prepared for it. And so as Christians, let's always be prepared for Jesus coming back. It could be right now. It could be 1,000 years from now. But we do know that he's coming. So we need to be prepared and keep doing a good work until he comes back. And for those that aren't Christian, we need to be prepared. And so I want to encourage you to get your life right with God, if you haven't already, so you can be prepared for when he comes back. There's a lot of craziness going on in the world right now. But let's remember, God's in control. He's got this. And if we have our faith in him, we don't have anything to be worried about. I hope you have a great rest of the day. And if you have any questions, you want to talk about any of the things we talked about here, feel free to reach out to us, and you can find us on gracemind.org. Have a great day.